It wasn't long before she was riddled with tumors from her pituitary gland to her ovaries. She ballooned in weight and continues to have health problems. Carol will never be the same again. She no longer wants to work as a food engineer because, quote, I can't work at a place where I'm knowingly poisoning people.
This story is actually worse than the tobacco story because at least you can choose not to smoke. Food, you have no choice.
We were now at the radio station where Carol would have a chance to tell the world her story and what food additives like MSG and aspartame do to any unfortunate organism that comes in contact with it. This radio program, The Power Hour, can be heard around the world on shortwave radio or the internet every day of the week in rebroadcasts or broadcasts.
To the point where they're leaving their seats and they're going out and becoming activists and they're demonstrating and writing letters.
It's msgtruth.org. That's her website. Now, she became injured as a result of using MSG, but she didn't really use it. It was done to her.
I was basically shoveling aspartame out of a barrel.
Whoa, can you believe that, listeners? Shoveling aspartame out of a barrel.
I've had many problems over the years.
What about these tabs? You know the tab drugs?
Yes, the quick dissolve, like the
Listerine. Quick dissolve.
The Listerine, the Listerine quick dissolve things, those have aspartame in them as well.
Wow.
If the Power Hour show allows people like Carol to speak out on such topics, they have to be creative about staying on the air. Advertisers that support the mainstream media do so because they're able to tout pharmaceuticals, processed foods, and lethal chemicals. Not here. What the Power Hour sells are natural products, food flavorings, books, and DVDs. Host Joyce Riley knew Charlotte Gerson and was familiar with the Gerson therapy. Joyce's background is in the military as a nurse, and the Gulf War affected her with Gulf War syndrome, an illness. She then produced a startling film called Beyond Treason, which documented the serious environmental degradation from U.S. munitions tipped with depleted uranium, as well as experimental vaccines and more. The consequences of these activities are horrifying. Radioactive depleted uranium, for example, has a half-life of 4.5 billion years and has now contaminated regions of the Middle East forever. Joyce explained the Gulf War syndrome suffered by military personnel.
The Gulf War illness is something that is a combination of a lot of toxins. And I couldn't figure out why I was sick because I only flew from Alaska to Cuba during the time that I was a flight nurse. But I became ill. I did have the vaccines. A lot of the troops did have the oil well fire exposure. They had chemicals, biologicals, vaccines, everything involved. What we do know now is that they were full of toxins. I was a nurse for about 35 years, and during that time I'd done everything from electroconvulsive therapy, which is shock therapy. I'd been a chemo nurse. I was a director of nursing. I was a nurse in a heart, lung, liver, kidney transplant unit, and I never appreciated food at all. I never appreciated what it was for. And then I became ill after the Gulf War, and it was amazing to me that nothing in medicine could make me better, nothing. So I had to start looking into alternative and integrative medicine. Gulf War veterans were becoming ill right after the Gulf War. Thousands of them were becoming ill. And we had no place to turn to. We found out that there were some Gulf War veterans that had been helped by eating raw fruits, vegetables, fruits, and doing juicing. And
when all this talk about vaccines came up, Garrett shared his own feelings about vaccines that are given to infants and school-age children. There was a 90% reduction in diseases before the vaccines were even introduced, as graphs clearly show. It was improved nutrition that caused the reduction, not vaccines. Vaccines are neurotoxic, and for that reason and awareness, the boy has a clear position on the subject.
Genetically engineered foods are literally lethal.
It was here in San Francisco that the boy had the good fortune to meet the executive director of the Center for Food Safety, Andrew Kimbrell. The Center for Food Safety is a national nonprofit organization working to protect consumers and the environment from the hazards of harmful food production technologies and promote organic and other forms of sustainable agriculture.
One of the great misconceptions we have about genetically engineered food is that the genie is out of the bottle, you know, and you hear all the time 60 or 70% of foods got genetically modified ingredients in it. Not true. 60% of processed food has genetically engineered ingredients. Actually, almost none of your whole foods are genetically engineered. None of your fruits, none of your vegetables, you know, your meat, your fish, most of your dairy products are completely free of genetically engineered ingredients. As a matter of fact, there's only really 4 genetically engineered crops. That's corn, cotton, canola, and soy. So we have stopped genetically engineered wheat. We've stopped genetically engineered rice. We've stopped genetically engineered fish. We've stopped these biopharmaceuticals. We're seeing that really genetically engineered food is one of the great failures of modern agriculture. It's being rejected around the world. And not only can we stop it, we are stopping it. There are 5 companies that are behind GMOs. You have Monsanto, DuPont, Bayer, Syngenta, and Dow. Those are the big 5 companies behind genetically engineered foods, and they all share one thing in common. They're not agricultural companies, they're chemical companies. And there's a reason for that. Genetic engineering today means only one thing, not all the stuff that's been advertised, all the myths about more food, more nutritious food, tastier food, all nonsense science fiction. These chemical companies have engineered these crops so they can withstand more and more of their herbicides and pesticides. And they selling hundreds of millions of more tons of their chemicals. That's what they're about. I'm not surprised that Monsanto did not want to interview for this film. Monsanto has developed a technology which has one purpose and one purpose alone, which is they can sell more of their herbicides.
Garrett was shocked to find in doing his homework that many of the people that work for these chemical companies later worked in government positions that were supposed to regulate these corporate giants. Sometimes they went back to work for the corporations again. Employees commonly move through what has been coined the revolving door between corporations and the public agencies that regulate them. Monsanto should not have to vouchsafe the safety of biotech food. Our interest is in selling as much as possible. Assuring its safety is the FDA's job. But when this quote is said alongside a statement from the Food and Drug Administration, it simply doesn't give the casual food eater much protection. The boy found this all very disturbing, with 0 credibility left over for either group.
Ultimately, it is the food producer who is responsible for assuring safety.
So really, it's up to the good nature of the biotech companies to provide studies to the government. But mostly, this is an unregulated industry, and this is our food.
One of the great questions people ask is, are genetically engineered foods lethal? Are they toxic? And the FDA gave us an answer. The Food and Drug Administration of the United States gave it an answer. In the 80s and 90s, they looked at these foods and said, yes, the process of genetic engineering can take a non-toxic food and make it toxic. It can create new allergens. It can lower nutrition in food. It can lower our immune response. And in certain cases, we even see these foods have the potential to create cancer, certain of this technology. So the answer is in on whether GM foods are lethal or toxic. Yes, the very process can make a safe food and turn it into a toxic food and potentially a lethal food. The objective of Monsanto is clear. Monsanto has become the largest seed company in the world. Monsanto is in the process of buying up all the seeds of the world, which they then want to patent and control so that farmers will not be able to save those seeds. And they want to genetically engineer those seeds, and they want to put something called terminator technology in those seeds. And this has those seeds create suicide after one growing season so that farmers cannot save those seeds. So what Monsanto's really after is controlling all the seeds of the earth and making sure that the farmers of the earth cannot save those seeds. This becomes extremely important when you realize that 80% of all the farmers of the world depend on seed saving for their survival. So if Monsanto is able, either through patenting or through this terminator technology, to destroy their ability to save seeds, the result will be mass starvation.
Garrett was surprised to learn that controlling pests and all the other reasons chemicals are applied, including artificial fertilizers, is completely unnecessary. There are dozens of institutions in the U.S. alone that strive to declare the good news of sustainable agriculture. Dr. Paul Hepperly demonstrated to us through many seed and field trial studies the amazing ways in which plants thrive and outperform chemically dependent fields. In many instances, the crop yields far exceed chemically treated farms. The studies are extensive, repetitive, and uplifting to anyone who cherishes good health. Dr. Gerson stated that the soil is our external metabolism. It must be free of sprays and poisons, or the body cannot heal. With chemical agriculture, the water that comes from your tap may contain much more than fluoride and chlorine. And there's another food treatment process that could still threaten your health.
What we have found with the irradiation of food is it does not just kill the bacteria, which is what it's used for, but actually molecularly changes the food. It creates something in food called free radicals. These are novel molecular elements in the food that have never been there before. For example, in normal foods, we've seen the creation of benzene, which is a known carcinogen. And we've seen a number of other toxic elements in these food created because of the irradiation that fundamentally alter that food. So we have an ethical responsibility to eat well. The beautiful truth is that people around the world are saying no to GM foods, they're saying no to irradiation, they're saying no to food additives, and they're saying yes to organic food and beyond organic food. They're saying yes to food that is local, that is appropriate scale, that is humane, that's biodiverse, and that's socially just.
Garrett thought that one way to stop some of this is by the way we vote, if indeed you can trust the voting machines to work right. How could a man who was curing cancer and chronic disease over 80 years ago be so misunderstood? It was now even within reach for this 15-year-old boy to understand. Is it at this point a race against time to consider the gift Gerson offered the world so long ago before we exceed the tipping point merely from an environmental standpoint? During the course of our travel, Garrett noted an article in the paper about obesity. After what he had learned, it wasn't a bit surprising. With all these chemicals and craving for more chemicals and more refined foods and sugar, we are bound to be obese and die that way. The Ohio Valley is the casket-making capital of the world. Naturally, the boy had wondered what eventually happens to an oversized dead person. Here at Goliath Casket Company, this family-owned business is experiencing a booming market, which Garrett credited to pharmaceutical drugs, MSG, aspartame, vaccines, food irradiation, genetically modified foods, dental amalgams, water fluoridation, and root canals, to name a few. Even the standard-sized casket is an inch wider than it used to be.
Most people won't get in one because they're afraid to do that. That's an omen, bad omen.
This would actually be quite nice for a cabin up in Alaska in the summer. You can close the lid in there, you wouldn't get any light, and you could sleep better.
Stick your fingers out. Most of the people are not taller, but they're wider and deeper. One of the issues we have with oversized obesity and oversized people is that they're very wide and they're also very much thicker or deeper. So our caskets have to be designed to accommodate this problem. Also, when they ask for a cremation, and many times they cannot do the cremation because the doors on the retort aren't big enough.